Star Trek, disappointingly, has no new upcoming TV shows about its best and most popular era, Star Trek, the next generation's 24th century, which continued into the 25th century in Star Trek, Picard. TNG kicked off the most expansive era of Star Trek. Overseen by executive producer Rick Berman, the 24th century spanned TNG, Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, Star Trek, Voyager, and 4 Star Trek, the Next Generation movies. Star Trek on Paramount Plus continued TNG's era with Star Trek, Picard, Star Trek, Lower Decks, and Star Trek, Prodigy. 2025 won't be entirely lacking in Star Trek, the Next Generation era representation. Star Trek Section 31 is set in the lost era of the 24th century, decades before Star Trek, the Next Generation. However, after Section 31, Star Trek on Paramount Plus has no new projects scheduled or in production that take place in the late 24th century or early 25th century. Similarly, with Netflix still not renewing Star Trek, Prodigy, the beloved animated series continuation of the 2380s, also grounds to a halt. Star Trek stopped exploring the 24th century after Star Trek Nemesis failed at the box office in 2002, which killed the Star Trek, the Next Generation movie franchise. In the 2000s, the only new Star Trek TV series on the air was Star Trek Enterprise, a sequel set in the 22nd century. When Star Trek Discovery premiered in 2017, its first 2 seasons were set in the mid-23rd century. Star Trek's 24th century remained dormant for 18 years until Star Trek Picard premiered in 2020. Set in 2399 and ushering in the 25th century, Star Trek Picard finally continued TNG's era and story, perhaps even more pleasingly. At least until Star Trek Picard Season 3 reunited the cast of Star Trek, the Next Generation. Star Trek Lower Decks continued TNG's era and its popular aesthetic. Star Trek Prodigy was initially set far away from the United Federation of Planets, but by the end of Star Trek Prodigy Season 2, it too came to embody the shiny best of TNG's time period. Unfortunately, Star Trek Picard and Star Trek Lower Decks are over at Paramount Plus, and Star Trek Prodigy's future is a question mark. For the second time, TNG's era has come to an all-stop with no new shows expanding the 24th and 25th centuries. Star Trek The original series may be the Star Trek that started it all, and Captain James T. Kirk's William Shatner show is arguably the most iconic Star Trek with the general public. But Star Trek The Next Generation has become perhaps an even greater nexus of Star Trek. TNG's 24th century massively expanded the Star Trek universe, introducing countless beloved characters, with Captain Jean-Luc Picard, Patrick Stewart, equaling, possibly exceeding, Captain Kirk in stature as the most popular captain of the Enterprise.